right, so keep that in mind. We just went through the idea that no two individuals look alike, observation 4, the idea that the next one we said populations fluctuate, that's number 2. Then we said, and I think we went ahead and talked about number 5. Uh, I tried to keep thinking about these. They tend to resemble their parents. Then we said most important one in our purposes was number 3, because that's a constant struggle for food and shelter. And then finally number 1, use the alligator as an example, that that represents a large number of gametes are produced, but not all will survive, because something like cannibalism, and that is a type of social structure, okay? That's one of the things we're going to be talking about today. So again, when we see this evaluation on Thursday, okay, keep cueing or cluing yourself in on what those observations are, because of course that's going to be 1/3 of your evaluation on there, and it's just 15 questions, okay, and you have a bank to pick from. You just pick the letter, goes right next to that. And I think we said before, it's so important to know how to communicate appropriately with doing vocab terms. Some of you are going into some sort of mechanics, and when you just first start out, okay, one of the things that I think is important to realize is, because I talked to Sam about that last year, to Taylor, what did those two have in common when they just got back for their senior year? Yeah, just got out of basic training, and then going to advanced instructional training, or AIT. The reason we bring that up is you don't want to be that type of individual that you go to your home unit and you say, I just got out of AIT, I know what you need to do. You do that in front of a higher ranking CEO, and they will put you in your place real quick. I'm not speaking from experience, but just the idea of, you don't want to be one of those guys, the 17, 18, 19-year-old that just graduates from that and want to change the world. I mean, it's good to try to do that, but there are good ways to do that, and there's not so good ways to approach that, because what would happen is they're going to teach you how they want to have that procedure done, whether it's mechanics or driving or anything to that effect. Some of you are going to go into how many diesel mechanics will we have in here? Anybody? Just one? Auto mechanics then? So when some of us are maybe going down to, or up to Lake area, or down to Southeast, what might that possibly be? Because you already said diesel mechanics. Is that which direction? Or Mitchell? Okay. Anybody else going down to Southeast that you know of? Okay. Just think how silly you would look if on your first day you have to change a hydraulic hose, and for those of you who don't know, you have one end that will actually turn, and then the other end is going to be stationary. And the person that you're working under says, okay, I need a 3/4 or 7/8 inch wrench, and you come back with a box end. What good is that going to do? Because there's some of that vocab terms. I don't know why they call it this, but what's true about a box end wrench? No. What type of wrench? Yeah, you got a crescent wrench, okay, and then open-ended wrenches, right? But then the box end means it's what? Like this. Yeah, this is a box end wrench. How are you going to get that on that hydraulic hose? Because you can't slip it over the end and on down. You don't want to be that guy thinking, I know everything there is to know about this, and then you show up. And I'm not saying that any of you would. Just don't take that approach, okay? So again, this type of vocabulary we're trying to get you to correlate, you're going to be using something similar to that in the near future. Or I need a hammer. Well, what do you need? A claw hammer, a ball peen hammer, a mallet hammer. That's a vague term. I need a screwdriver. What? A slotted, a Phillips, star. I need some tape. What? Scotch tape, masking tape, duct tape, uh, Teflon tape. What might you use Teflon tape for? It's white. What do you? Yeah, pipe or hydraulics, plumbing. That's what you'd use that for. So that vocabulary is always going to be important, not for just in here, but for when you get out into society. We want you to be able to think for yourself. Okay, so moving on. So we left off with these inferences. So what we see here, okay, differential reproduction of variants gradually transform a species. What did that do to the elephants on an island? How is this transformation taking place to these elephants? Why are they getting, you're correct, why are they getting smaller? Yeah, because if they can't climb, they're not going to get to their food source. That's right. So, again, this evolution that's taking place is a gradual and slow process. Nature is selecting these animals to be successful. In this case, becoming smaller is going to be vital because they need to be able to reach their food source. Okay. So this long-term improvement, becoming smaller, is going to be, again, going to be an asset for them and be able to pass that on to their next generation. Okay, so speciation. This is what was actually happening. This geographical separation. Water levels were rising on this island. Okay, that we observed yesterday. So then also what we see here, descend from a common ancestor. These little tiny elephants, are they related to a woolly mammoth or what we would consider as a regular mammoth? And the answer to that would be yes. Okay? And what we mean here, reproductive incompatibility between species. What that means, okay, a large mammoth and then a small mammoth, okay? What's going to happen is you're not going to have that transformation if these two different populations keep breeding with one another. But they will maintain that trait within that species if you have two of the same elephants the same size, okay? So the reason we say that, how many of you remember genetics and pea plants? I can't imagine you're thinking, oh my gosh, I love genetics. I would find that very hard. Maybe some of you did. If we're talking about the cattle portion, that was probably maybe a little more interesting. But when it comes to pea plants, what's dominant, tall or short? It's actually tall traits, dominant over short. So what we see happening here is if you continually have this incompatibility between a tall mammoth and a short mammoth, all of these elephants are going to end up being what? Tall. How's that going to be a success for them to reach their food source? The answer it's not. That species will die off if they do not make that change of compatibility within the species. Okay. And then what this means, we're just passing this from one generation to the next. It was a success for these animals to become smaller, so they did, kept breeding. A successful trait gets passed on to the next generation. That's what we're referring to when we're talking about speciation. So we don't have a whole lot left. I think just two. One, two. Yep. Does everyone have this information that wants it? Okay. So even though this was just one slide, we went through a lot of material. Okay. Sometimes it's what's not written, but what we talk about to try to make sense of this. Okay. Finally, species selection. All right. What we're referring to here, okay, when we're talking about mating rituals, it's actually the aves, the class aves is probably the best example for that. Does anyone know who the aves are? Jerry is an example.
Oh,
Birds, okay? That's class aves, okay? So some of these mating rituals, what they do through their migration, maybe it's first come, first serve. Flying south to the mating fields. Then when they migrate north, it's to the feeding fields, okay? So what happens is, who is the female going to pick? The male that looks the healthiest. So ducks is a very good example of that. The peacock as well. The reason we talk about birds. How would you know that that mallard male is going to be really healthy? What sticks out in your mind with a mallard as far as feather color? I know that's a mallard because what?
the curls.
The green head. So could be in their eyes, the brighter the green, the healthier that would be. Okay? That could be an example of some of these mating rituals. The female will pick that male for that reason, because the feathers are very vibrant and bright. Okay, social structuring. Okay, an example for that. What's true about a wolf pack? Yeah, you have an alpha male, and then kind of like the one tailing behind. Prides of lions is very similar too. When you saw the Lion King, you had Mufasa. Okay, Mufasa, Simba, and Scar. Okay, so Mufasa was the alpha male. Then we say Omega. Does that sound right? Would be Scar. Okay, because they're not that they competed for that territory, but that's why Mufasa was the alpha, and then Omega would be Scar. So social structuring. That's how a female picks this male. Sometimes maybe they don't have a choice. It's going to be the alpha male. And then finally, migration patterns. Birds go through that as well. Again, they fly south. The ones that fly south and get there first have the best opportunity to pick a nesting site. Guys, if you don't, not you guys, but male birds, if they don't have a nesting site, are they going to have the opportunity to reproduce? The answer would be no. Okay? So you'd want to be first in that category. So that's what we're talking about, selection. Okay? Finally, we know that extinction means it's gone. And then finally, if it's mass, that'd be an entire taxa. Okay? What we mean by that, when was in your estimation or your guess, when was the example of the last mass extinction? Well, I know it is. Yeah, the Jurassic period. Okay? Just after the Jurassic period. Because, I think it was theorized as a Gulf Coast impact. Asteroid comes in and wipes out, of course, the dinosaurs. That was the last known mass extinction. Okay? All right. So, we will continue with where we left off with yesterday about size of these animals. So, at the beginning, why is size so important for animals to be successful? Determines what? Well, right. That's why I'm asking you. Determines what you can feed on, but not only who's feeding upon you. That's another example as well. Okay, so insects. How many of you just look at insects like cockroaches, crickets, beetles, and just think, I'm not touching that. Okay, I'm beginning to notice some more of the cicada insects running out on our morning route. Some of them insects laying on the street. Do bugs bother any of you at all? Okay. Then you hear crunch. So, so why is it a normal cicada? I would say is probably about 2.5 inches long. What about the 6-inch cicada? I mean, at one time that may have been possible, but why is it not possible now? Not enough oxygen. That's right. So also, we'll talk about this when we do get to the arthropods. They don't breathe like we do. They don't have lungs. It's actually piped directly to their cells. And oddly enough, with insects, a lot of their tracheal tubes are not just only found on the sides of their body, but with house flies, where are their tracheal tubes located, do you think? And you could see it in that video, but you just probably never really ever asked that. But if you pull the wings off of flies, they probably suffocate because that's where their tracheal tubes are located. Strange, that's just what nature had selected them to do. All right, so we need to get up to 20 minutes. Okay.